The FDA also, prevents innovations from reaching the marketplace, and an innovation that's prevented from reaching the marketplace can't be perfected by market competition. It can't be perfected by innovations that come from open source participation in the market. So for those reasons, the FDA should be abolished. So the FDA and DEA standing in the way of medical innovation and best medical practices, even current best medical practices, is a reason why every right-thinking liberal or libertarian should oppose the existence of those agencies and their state counterparts, because all the states have counterparts of the illegitimate federal agencies, and those counterparts are used to pressure sheriff's departments into providing police power to those agencies when they're doing their illegitimate law enforcement. So that illegitimate law enforcement, a great deal can be done to interfere with illegitimate law enforcement by electoral participation in sheriff's races. And in closing, I would suggest that libertarians don't participate significantly in educational campaigns, but that they actually try to get elected to sheriff and state legislature for the purpose of legitimizing and spreading a pro-jury independence message that prevents innocent people from being punished and sent to prison. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't run people for statewide offices, but those people should be thoughtful and articulate video spokespersons. They should make videos that explain libertarianism and explain why it's best, and they should run educational campaigns more or less over the internet, because they have no chance of winning elective office. And that's because campaigning is a huge part of the election process, and face-to-face campaigning is the most effective campaigning, and face-to-face campaigning can only be done in significant numbers at the local level, numbers capable of creating a network effect that then allows libertarian local candidates to win. So that local face-to-face campaigning, I guess, it kind of slipped my mind in this whole presentation fully addressing that, but face-to-face campaigning in defense of jury independence is the most effective thing that any libertarian can do in defense of actual individual freedom, while simultaneously trying to get someone elected. But here's the thing. Existing politics is structured such that you will only be paid, the best people, the best activists will only be paid for trying to get people elected. So being that that's the case, if you want to talk to large numbers of people about jury independence, no libertarian candidate is going to prohibit you from doing that. It's what they're campaigning on. So the right way to get paid is to pair the paid activism with the jury rights activism, to marry the two perfectly into paid activism that tries to elect libertarians. They have a self-interest, even if they're only career politicians, in paying jury activists to go out door to door and talk about jury nullification. And if they're not willing to have you talk about jury nullification, that's a good way of showing that they're scumbags, that they're idiots, that they're infiltrators of the Libertarian Party, and part of what has made the Libertarian Party into controlled opposition. Every Libertarian candidate should campaign on a jury independence platform and should be explaining all the time to voters who intend to vote for them that that's our primary means of taking power back from an illegitimate system. So that's the complete argument for libertarian participation in electoral politics as I see it. I'm just one guy. I might not have addressed everything. I might not have addressed everything perfectly, but that's the best argument, not necessarily the most succinct, but the best argument that I can make for libertarian electoral participation. And I think that it destroys all the anarchist arguments in favor of non-participation. Once again, I'm going to repeat as in closing here that those anarchists will not go door to door encouraging jury independence. And I've said this already, but I'm going to say it in a more subtle way. Let's say that you had an organization that went door to door, that was anarchist or anarchic, and encouraged jury nullification of law only, and did not encourage people to vote, or even encourage the opposite, so-called principled non-voting. That organization would take in fewer dollars because donors to political campaigns understand donating to candidates. They do not understand donating to jury nullification outreach efforts. So you would have to retrain the existing enormous network toward a new form of donations and contributions to a new type of organization that had never been tried before, rather than simply redirecting the existing donations to a dual purpose. And that dual purpose is synergistic, where the jury independence supports the Libertarian candidate, and the Libertarian candidate supports the jury independence. So both of those things work together to bring in more donations and make your door-to-door activists more effective. And if you think that we can be effective without paying activists, you're wrong. You're just wrong. No successful political movement, including the abolitionist movement, succeeded without running campaigns and candidates, and paying for people to work, and paying for people to speak on street corners and in public fora, and paying people to go door to door to elect the abolitionist free soil candidates. Now, as I mentioned, Lysander Spooner's bosses were both elected abolitionists. John Davis, was elected for greater than 10 years, from 1835 to 1840 as a U.S. Senator, and from 1845 to 1853 as a U.S. Senator, and from 1840 to 45 as the governor of Ohio. So these were guys who, though they were anarchic, they were not anarchists, and they wanted fugitive slaves to go free. They didn't want to punish innocent people, and they prioritized that above all else. They prioritized that above principled non-voting, which the general public simply interprets as principled ineffectiveness. Gosh darn it, I'm going to be so principled that I take myself out of the battle for freedom. That's the way that it's interpreted. Now that doesn't have to mean that that's what it is. You can invent a whole bunch of software applications, hardware that helps out anarchists, and you're doing something to help out anarchists, and therefore to help out anarchy, to move us towards a situation where there's less government than there currently is. Don't get me wrong, counter-economics is legitimate. Principled non-voting is not legitimate, though, because it's taking efforts from the abolitionist system as it currently stands and saying, don't build upon that. Don't engage in feedback and correction, which is the most powerful engineering concept that there is in terms of system design. For system design, that's the most powerful concept. Don't take something that is imperfect and perfect it and get it to be the platform upon which you build the jury independence message. Don't reward those candidates who have busted their asses walking door to door, doing something that most anarchists would never ever do, would never even consider doing. Don't punish those abolitionists by refusing to go to the polls, and don't interfere with their ability to determine how effective they were by refusing to go to the polls. If every person who calls themselves a libertarian or an anarchist went to the polls and got seated on juries, we'd be living in a libertarian paradise. And I'll go into the mathematics of jury nullification in a future video, and that'll be a shorter video, more succinct, because I've spoken about it a lot, and it rolls off the tip of my tongue, and it's the most important concept that you can understand as it relates to jury nullification of law, which is also called jury independence. So thanks for paying attention, especially if you've paid attention to the whole thing. I've gone into pretty great detail on this subject, and I think I've made the case.